10 Weeks of Ted, episode 10. But as it turns out, there's 2 more episodes. So got to hang tight, folks. We got 2 more weeks to go here. But number 10 was an interesting one. Week 10 was an interesting one in terms of player or character development. Some parts with soccer, not a lot with soccer. There was a sort of a World Cup pause while the players went back to play with their international teams. And but of all the themes that were going on in the background, the one that I want to focus on is the one with Nate. And if you remember, Nate was sort of the equipment manager when the season began, or when 3 seasons ago when the whole show began. And he has since evolved into quite a strategist, and has since moved on to another club and coaches the head coach there. But in this episode, he leaves the club. He quits his job. We're not told why. We have some ideas, but we're not told why. And the dynamic between Nate and his dad becomes really a focal point in this episode. And what's interesting about that dynamic is that it is it's quite characteristic of one might say traditional father-son relationships, where the father is using what an old school term, what we might call tough love, right? So throughout their relationship, throughout Nate's childhood and into his early and young adulthood, the father has, sparingly would be a nice way to put it, shared his approval of not only Nate's life and what he gets up to, but also has withheld, praise in terms of things that he's accomplished. And he's quite accomplished. Like, he's done some pretty cool things. We find out in this episode that he also was quite a high-level violin player. And so what happens in this scene is that they have this exchange where Nate sort of calls out his dad for being such a dick to him through his childhood, right? Why were you so hard on me? Yada, yada, yada. And the dad confides that, you had a lot of privileges that I didn't. I thought I needed to push you. And in doing so, he fell into a trap that so many parents and leaders, coaches, do as well, which is conditional love, basically. That's basically what it is. It boils down to conditional love. I'll show you love when you do what I want you to do. And we've talked about this before, especially around Ike and around dogs, and how they just don't understand that notion that dogs, they don't withhold their love in order to get what they want, whereas we humans have this bizarre ability to utilize love as a way to control people. And in this case, we have a father trying to control his son's behavior by using love, right? When you do what I like, I'll love you. When you don't, I won't. And my guess is, myself included, there are some men on this video who are my generation, who can think back to some times in their younger youth where perhaps their dad used a same strategy, and not maliciously. I just think it was, they did what they knew, right? And that was likely considered normal because their dad had done the same to them. Why I want to bring that up is because ultimately when you have conditional love, you limit the ability of whoever you're trying to support. You limit their ability to perform, which is the paradox here, right? You think, well, I'm driving you, I'm incentivizing you to perform, and it actually ends up being a distraction. We end up focusing on wanting to get that love, focusing on the person, which interferes with our ability to actually perform. And I learned that lesson as a coach because as a younger athlete, certainly I would race to garner approval, to prove my worthiness to the coaches that I had. It was just a distraction, right? I was focused on things I shouldn't have been focused on. Instead of focusing on the race and what the race entailed, I was focused on the end result and whether or not my coaches would approve of me. The reason I bring it up also is because managers and leaders do the same thing, right? It's yeah, it's a bizarre, it's a bizarre human trait that we think this notion of, if I withhold praise and love and I use tough love, I'm going to have high performers, and nothing could be further from the truth. One of the things that I tried to do in my last iteration, especially as a coach, was to remove myself from the motivation equation, right? I didn't want my athletes racing for my approval. And so how I did that was meet them as the same person every single time, whether they won or lost or had a great race or didn't have a great race. I tried to show up as best I could as the same guy, so that when they got in the starting gates of a race, when they had to perform, the last thing on their mind was, wow, I got to do this properly so that my coach approves of me. And when we do that as leaders, we create a huge interference for the people that work for us and that we're responsible for. So it's just a bizarre, archaic belief that it is actually a way to motivate people, but nothing could be further from the truth. And so, we would invite you to consider, are there ways in my leadership style, my coaching style, hell, my parenting style, where I do that, consciously or unconsciously, where I withhold my praise, my approval, as a way to support those who I want to achieve extraordinary things. And I think on the surface, we think we're doing the right thing, but not so much. And so, yeah, maybe just have a reflection as to what is your leadership style, right? What is your motivation? What are your motivation tactics, either as a coach, parent, or leader? And maybe just check in and wonder if there's a different way you could be doing it. Okay, mosquitoes are coming out. We're gonna head home. So enjoy the rest of your week. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you again for number 11. 11 weeks of TED? That doesn't make much sense. Anyway, okay, see everybody. Bye-bye.